Welcome one, welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how great third-gen tacos do on the Rubicon, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name is Tyler, and joining me once again for another beautiful day here in the Snail Trail studio is Mr. Jimmy Jett. JJ, how are you doing, bro?
I'm good. I'm full.
You're full?
I'm full. My carnitas super burrito was delicious.
Yeah. I had a chicken quesadilla.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It looked pretty damn good, too.
That was tasty. Yeah, super tasty. Yeah. Anyways.
You know, I've had the nickname JJ before, too.
What, you're telling me I have to come up with new nicknames or something?
No, I'm just saying that it's not something new.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know.
All right.
When I worked at Trader Joe's back in the day, that was my name.
JJ?
JJ.
Did it say it on your name card?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
I think I still have the name card, too.
JJ.
Yeah.
Was it the letter J?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Not
So,
JJB?
No. JJBD.
JJBD?
James Ship. Black Designs.
Uh-huh.
Nope.
Yeah. All right. So
Moving on.
We have a long episode.
Yes, we do. Before let's get into that episode, let's. I've got two sort of main topics. First, let's talk about the clutch.
Clutch. Okay. What's your thoughts on it? Huh?
Well, I want to know what happened with the shop.
Oh. So yeah, that's right. We haven't closed up the shop saga and my transmission, everything, the clutch saga. So yeah, so I think last time we left it off, I was trying to figure out what I should do with the shop, right?
Yeah, and you asked for people's feedback.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did you get feedback?
I did. I got a lot of feedback.
Oh, cool.
Like a lot.
And what was the consensus?
Consensus was that I needed to get at bare minimum a partial refund. It seemed to be like it was split 50-50 between getting a full refund and getting a refund for at least the labor for dropping the transmission, which is about $950.
Okay.
So I'm like, I think that's fair too. And there was a lot of people that gave some really good, well thought out opinions and saying, hey, you did take it to a shop. They did get some work done. Some of the work they got done, most of it they got done, looked good. Mm-hmm. The stuff I specifically asked them to do got done well.
Okay.
But they fucked up everything else when putting the rig back together, right?
Right.
And so it seemed to be the consensus was I should at least bare minimum try and get the labor back for dropping the transmission, which is $950. So that would leave me at what? $750 for rear main seal, clutch, flywheel, throw out bearing, pilot bearing seal.
Okay. I'm
like, and that's fair. And I bought the clutch. I brought in the clutch. So that wasn't something I bought from them.
Okay.
So,
sure.
So I called the guy back up, the owner of the shop. Tom is his name. He works at Standard Auto Care.
Throwing that out there.
Just throwing that out there in case anybody wants to know. And I talked to him. I was like, hey, man. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to give him the opportunity to do the right thing.
Yes.
Right? I didn't want to necessarily go in demanding for my money back right away. I want to give him the opportunity to do the right thing and offer a partial refund or something.
Okay.
So I called him up and I said, hey, Tom, I've gone through the entire rig. I have a list of stuff that was not done correctly. And so I'm going to give you that list right now and you can do with that as you like. I highly, highly recommend talking about this list with your technician. And hopefully we can all learn from this situation in the future. And I said, if you want to do something about it, cool. That'd be awesome. If not, whatever. So I gave him the list of everything and afterwards he goes, man, yeah, that's kind of embarrassing. I said, okay, yeah. I mean, I wasn't going to say it, but you should be embarrassed with putting your shop's 30-year reputation on the line here and have all this happen. And it's not like all this stuff that happened was really because I have a highly modified rig. It's like nuts and bolts were left loose. Like shit wasn't done fully.
The shifter was put in 180 degrees incorrectly.
Exactly. So, and he goes, yeah, that is pretty embarrassing. And he goes, I'm definitely going to talk with the tech about all this. He's a great guy. He's been here a month and a half. And you know, he works at a really fast pace, and I think he's just not finishing projects. And, you know, there's other situations, you know, things will arise when you're the new kid on the block and somebody says, hey, this car needs to have an oil change done really quick. Being the new kid, you want to go and step up and show what you're worth. And, you know, he probably did that a couple times. And when you do that, when you're in the middle of a project, you lose track of where you are in the project and you come back and things don't get finished.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm like, hey, I get that. But then maybe you shouldn't be asking him to go do oil changes while he's in the middle of a project. There's also that. Yeah. So anyways, we got off the phone and he didn't offer anything.
Oh, really?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No partial refund. No, nothing. Just said, hey, sorry, this happened.
Wow.
And I was like, I really thought, like after talking, everything I've talked with the guy, I seriously 100% thought that he would have offered something. Nothing. And so I kind of sat on it for about an hour and I was like, should I call back? Like, I'm just going to be pissed now. Like, if I don't call back and talk to him, I'm just going to be pissed that he didn't do the right thing. And I'm going to be upset about it. And it's going to impact my life and work that I need to be getting done that I can't get done because now I'm like seething about this. I'm like letting it fester. And so I called the secretary real quick and I was like, he didn't offer anything. What should I do? And she goes, I think you should call back and tell him that you're really not happy with the way that turned out. And, you know, if he didn't feel like his shop was qualified to do the job, he shouldn't have taken the job, and see what you can do from there. And I was like, okay. So I called back Tom and I'm like, hey, Tom, Standard Auto Care. I'm really not happy with the way this turned out. You know, there's all this stuff that was left done incorrectly on my vehicle. My key is bent, and my vehicle speed sensor is bent. It still works, but it's going to break off soon. I need to get a new one of those. And I was like, and I had to drop the transmission, go get a new transmission, put it in. And, you know, I'm just really not happy with the way our conversation went earlier. I think it was heading in a good direction, but it kind of didn't finish where I thought it was going to finish. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I was like, I brought you the rig because I didn't have time to do it. It's a job that I could have done by myself. I did do by myself eventually, but I brought it to you because I didn't have time to do it. So my time was the value that I was willing to pay you guys to do the job. And now that I still had to do it anyways and use my time to do it, I feel like I paid you guys $1,700 for nothing. Maybe not for nothing, because you did get the clutch put in. You got me a new flywheel. You did all this other stuff. So I'm willing to totally down to pay that. That's 100% fair. You guys did that. You deserve the money for it. But I feel like I get screwed out of my time here because you used this as a learning lesson for your technician. And he goes, yeah, I feel really bad about that. And I'm like, okay, so here, let's make this fair. How about you just refund me for just the labor to drop the transmission? That's all I'm asking for. And we'll call it good. I'll be as happy as I can be with how this all played out. And I will consider you a stand-up guy and tell people, you know, hey, Tom's a great guy. Just double check their work if you go there. And he goes, I really can't do that. I'm like, why not? He goes, well, you went and got another transmission, right? And I said, yes. He goes, and you put that in, right? I said, yes. He goes, so you were going to have to get a new transmission anyways. So you having to go and drop your drivetrain, that's something you were going to have to do anyways. And he goes, I have to assume you weren't going to bring the rig back to us to do any more work on it, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm not, no, that's not happening.
Yeah, I'm never going back to you again.
And he goes, so in that case, you would have had to have dropped the drivetrain anyways to put a new transmission in. And I was like, I mean, I kind of understand that, but at the same time, I was going to drop it when I had time to do it. But because your technician, for some reason, messed with the input cover on the transmission and didn't tighten down the bolts, and so the transmission I had in there, even though it was operational, I couldn't use it because it was leaking oil so badly. That's why I had to take the time now that I don't have to do the job.
Right. Regardless of you getting another transmission, you still had to drop the old transmission to fix the job that they didn't finish.
Exactly. And that's what I told him. And he goes, yeah, I'm sorry. I can't give you a refund. He goes, all the other stuff I feel bad about, but you should have brought it back and given us the opportunity to do the warranty work on it. And I was like, warranty work to go through and finish a job that should have been finished in the first place?
Yeah, you didn't finish your job.
Yeah, you didn't finish the job, and then I had to go fix it. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let you touch my rig anymore. And he goes, and the other thing is you did come down very quickly. You came down quicker than we thought. And I was like, you told me I needed to get down there. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen?
He said your tech was about to leave.
Yes. And so he goes, yeah, but you should have then left the car with us to fix the stuff that was wrong. And I was like, I didn't know everything that was wrong. I had to go through it to figure out what was wrong. Like, all I knew was that the rig was stuck in double low. You may have broken my transfer case, and the transmission was leaking from God knows where, up in the bell housing. That's all we knew. Like, I didn't know all the other stuff that I found. And if I had gone through it, if I hadn't gone through it, would I have actually found that stuff? I don't know.
Yeah.
And so it eventually he got down to, he goes, hey, look, I do feel really bad. If you want anything for in the future, you can have, I'll give you $100. He said, I'll give you a discount on an oil change, or I'll give you $100 off the next time you come in for something.
That's it?
That's it. That's all he offered.
Shit.
And so I said, wow, I feel kind of insulted right now after all that. I thought I was being pretty fair. You sounded like a pretty fair guy. And I feel offering me a discount on an oil change after all of that.
Yeah.
That kind of upsets me a lot. And he goes, sorry, it's what I can offer. I was like, all right, I'm done talking to you, Tom. He goes, all right, you have a good day. I said, okay, you too.
Shit.
So that's it. And I have I've filed a complaint right after I got off the phone with them. I went and filed a complaint with the Bureau of Automotive Repair.
Okay.
So we'll see. From everybody I've talked to that works in the automotive industry, the BAR, Bureau of Automotive Repair, they take every complaint filed very seriously, and they go and investigate with the shop whatever happened. Whatever conclusions they come to, that complaint stays on the shop's permanent file forever.
Wow.
So I don't know. We'll see. I haven't checked my personal email yet. No, I filed it on the Morflate email, so the My Off-Road Radio email, so that I would check it when it came in, and I haven't got a response back from the bar. So, yeah, I'm just kind of waiting for the bar to reply now at this time, and I gave them the whole story, and I told them, I said, yeah, I went down there quick to go pick up the rig because they told me the tech was leaving. I needed to go down there quick, and I didn't feel safe leaving my vehicle there because of everything they had already messed up, and so I don't know. We'll see how it all turns out. But Standard Auto Care, here's my 5-star review.
You got one?
I got one, man.
Okay.
If you need a place to park your rig over for about a couple hours and drain the oil from your transmission, beautiful place to do it at.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Free oil drop.
Free oil drop on their property.
On their property.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I have to give a disclaimer there. I don't think they clean it up.
No?
No. They just let it kind of come out of your transmission and sit there in their parking lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
be careful when driving in. It might be slick.
It might be a little slippery when you pull in their parking lot. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. That's good. So free oil drop.
Or permanent 230 to 1 gear ratio in your vehicle.
Yeah, I don't know if you can say that for every rig.
Right.
Permanent lowest gear ratio possible when leaving.
Yes. You want to go a max of 5 miles an hour on the freeway? They're the place to go.
Yeah.
So anyways,
wow. That sucks, dude.
I honestly thought that if I had called him back and gave him the opportunity to do the right thing, that he would have. And so now I'm just kind of like, wow. All right. That's it. I guess I'm blown away. I'm speechless. I don't really know what to say or what else to do. So,
yeah, well, I think you've done about all you can do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
other than taking him to small claims court.
Yeah.
But like, I don't have the time for that. So
yeah, I mean, as much as I would hate doing it, and I've done it once in my life, you can like rebuttal it on your credit card too.
I have thought about doing that, but all the credit card company I think is going to do is say, oh, you're disputing a charge. And then they're going to call Standard Auto Care and say, oh, did they sign anything that proves that they actually paid for this? And then they'll show them the receipt that I signed and that all the work was done.
Yeah, it's been a while since I did it, but I think you don't have to dispute the whole thing. I think you can dispute part of the fee.
Oh, interesting. I thought it was like all or nothing.
I don't think so.
Huh. Interesting. I'll have to look into that then.
Yeah.
If we can dispute part of it, then I might be able to call up the credit card company. And I'm going to do that now. After we're done recording today, I'm going to call my credit card company and be like, hey, here's the situation. Am I within my rights to dispute this much of the payment?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do that now.
Yeah. I think, and to some extent, I think you're within your rights to be, that's the way the credit cards work. I mean, that's the purpose of credit.
I guess that's true.
In the credit side of things.
Yeah. So. Okay.
So I mean, I guess if anybody else out there has any other suggestions for Tyler and possibly what he should do or could do in regards to a shop kind of messing things up, feel free to write him. Taylor at snailtrail4x4.com.
Yep. Or Instagram.
Instagram him. 4x4 Toyota Tyler.
Yep. So I put all the drivetrain back up and it wasn't connected to the engine for some reason.
Oh, that's right.
I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
Every gear in the transmission and transfer cases just felt like it was in neutral, right? I would release the clutch pedal, which should engage the drivetrain.
Yeah.
And you can't hear anything spinning in the transmission or drivetrain.
That's odd.
I was like, that's really weird, but the engine's definitely turning. So I'm like, what's going on here? So I dropped the drivetrain again, which took me 45 minutes, start to finish.
Wow.
So I took the drive shafts off, skid plate off, starter out, clutch, slave cylinder off, dropped everything out within 45 minutes. So I'm like, I'm getting pretty good at this. This is going good. Benefit of all the madness here. And dropped it out, and then that was Friday night, and then Hussman came over Saturday morning first thing to help me just get another pair of eyes on and figure out what's going on. He has a really good way of stepping back and looking at stuff and figuring out what's wrong, right?
Yeah. He definitely takes his time to evaluate the situation.
Yeah. And so literally right as he's walking up my driveway, I'm messing with the input on the transmission, the outputs of the T case, and nothing was connected. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I bench tested the transmission, and the input and the output of the transmission spin. And when I spin it, when I put it in gear, they don't spin when it's in neutral. It spins backwards when it's in reverse. Well, I did all that in the bench testing, but nothing is spinning the outputs of the transfer cases when the transfer cases were mated to the transmission output.
Okay.
So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And as soon as I found that, Hussman's walk up the driveway. I'm like, dude, here's what I found out just now as you're walking up. I explain it to him, and he goes, So he kind of plays around with it. He goes, yep, I concur. I was like, okay, cool. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Here's the old transmission. Maybe we can take a look at that and glean something. So we're kind of looking over the old transmission. He looks at the output side of the transmission. He goes, well, what is this? And I was like, what's what? He goes, this. And he points at it, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, what are you pointing at? I don't know. And there was, on the output tail of the transmission, I had an extra aluminum sleeve on it that wasn't on the new transmission.
Oh.
So we ended up cracking open the transmission, my T cases again, so I could look at everything and see if they connected. But the output of the transmission is like back inside this like aluminum tail output sleeve that keeps oil in the transmission, right?
Okay.
And so we're looking at that, and I didn't notice at first. Hussman did. I have an extra aluminum sleeve that's 4 inches long.
Yeah.
On the old transmission that wasn't on the new transmission.
Oh.
And I'm like, the hell is that? And so we're looking at it. And I was like, I didn't even notice looking at the two that there's an extra 4 inches of aluminum sleeve here.
Yeah, that's a long distance for you.
I know it is. I'm not used to it. And so I'm looking at it. I'm like, is that like a coupler adapter of some sort? What's going on? And so we looked at it, and then we looked like down into the new transmission, and the output of it is a male 23 spline shaft. The input of the R1FA gear driven transfer cases for Toyota is also a male shaft.
Oh,
That's been converted to 23 spline.
yeah.
So two males can't go together and work, right?
Never.
No. They're trying docking forever, essentially. And so I was like, well, that's not going to work. And not only that, but like when you put the shafts were so far apart that when you put the flange surfaces, the mating surfaces of the T case and transmission together, the shafts are about 4 inches apart.
Oh, that seems convenient.
Yeah. And I was like, that's a freaking adapter. That's a coupler adapter. And he goes, oh, and then so he pulls out from the aluminum sleeve that's on the old transmission, he pulls out this smaller steel sleeve that had 23 splines on it. It's just straight through, almost like a Chinese finger trap with 23 splines on it.
Oh, interesting.
And he goes, I bet you. And so he takes the sleeve over and slides it over the T-case shaft, input shaft, and then takes it off and slides it into the old transmission over the transmission output shaft. Mm-hmm. Perfect fit on both of them.
Nice.
And he goes, well, there we go. Well, That's an easy fix. I was like, that is an easy fix. I don't know. I would have never have caught that.
Yeah.
So we just took the aluminum sleeve out. It's really cool the way it's designed because you take out the output seal of the transmission, and then this sleeve, you just put RTV around it and put it into the seal spot.
Oh.
And then it has the identical seal for the transmission on the other end of the sleeve. And so you just put RTV on, plop it in where the old seal was, and it seals everything up and has a sleeve in there to couple the two male shafts together.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so you finger trapped your transmission to your T case.
As Husman would like to say, they are forever locked trying to dock. So, yep.
I'm not going to touch that.
Don't go that way. Yes. So anyways, once we figured that out, we put everything back up into the rig, put everything on, and everything worked just the way as it should.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think also when I'm driving down on the freeway at highway speeds and I let off of the gas and I'm kind of in that coasting period where I'm not slowing down from coasting, but I'm not accelerating anymore, there's a really bad rattle from the transmission. We've talked about it before. And I thought it's just the transmission going. I thought it was the T cases, the twin stick shifters in the T case rattling around. Mm-hmm. Wasn't that. So I thought it was the transmission. I don't think it's the transmission because it still does it with the new transmission. I think it's that metal sleeve, the coupler inside
and
there.
The T case.
And I think it rattles because it's not, I don't want to say like a drive shaft fitment. There's a little tiny bit of play between the splines on it. And so I think when you're coasting in between slowing down due to drag and accelerating, that coupler is vibrating between the two shafts of the transmission and the T case, creating that vibration noise.
Oh, interesting. Maybe. Only one way to find out.
Take it out and coast the rig from the top of
a really big hill
of Donner Summit all the way down into Sacramento.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And see if it makes any noise.
Yeah. So anyways, I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm like, hey, so if anybody wants to mate the RF1A transfer cases to an R150 transmission, you need this coupler adapter apparently.
Yep. So that's good to know.
Yeah. So I figured that out. And then we went on the Rubicon on Monday.
Yeah.
So
a few days later.
2 days later.
And you can listen to that episode of the start of our trip. Mm-hmm. From last Friday's episode. Mm-hmm. Well, not Thursday, Friday.
Yep. So anyways, that was the saga is pretty much complete with the Forerunner and carrying it back up and running.
Yes.
You said you had two questions. One was the clutch.
Well, and the other one was our giveaway.
Oh, the giveaway. What about it? What's your question?
What are we giving away this month?
We're giving away a Spartan rope, which is a kinetic rope. It's not a kinetic strap. It's not a dynamic strap. It's kinetic rope. Dynamic rope? I think it's dynamic rope, kinetic strap. So dynamic rope. It's 20 feet long, I believe. It has the 33,000 pound braking strength, and 2 soft shackles.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And it looks really nice.
It is. It's pretty.
I bet it's longer than 20.
You think it is?
I don't know. It looks pretty girthy.
It's a 1 inch girth.
It is.
Yeah. 1-inch girth on that guy there. So
Yeah, so thanks, Spartan, for donating that.
Yeah, Spartan Rope also just released their Made in the USA kinetics.
Nice.
Dynamics.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So they now have a completely 100% Made in the USA option for their straps, dynamic ropes. So check those out if you're really into supporting the United States economy there. Go check that out over at Spartan Ropes. So.
Definitely. All right. Well, shall we start day 2?
Yeah, let's get into day 2 here out on the Rubicon Trail. So we ended day 1 where?
At the far end of Buck Island Lake, at like one of the last campgrounds, possibly the last campground on Buck Island Lake before you were to get to Big Sluice.
Yep, the Martini Tree, which I like to call the damn tree.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're back down there at that campsite. Awesome little campsite. You can fit, I think, 6 to 7 rigs down on the water comfortably between those 2 spots. But there's more spaces kind of up a little bit, up the embankment.
Yeah.
Closer to the restrooms that you could fit another 10, 15 rigs maybe.
That'd be tight.
It'd be tight, yeah. So
but definitely anyways, 5.
Yeah. So it was a cool little spot. Mosquitoes were rough.
They were.
Very heavy, very thick. And we made tacos for everybody on Monday night.
We did.
Night.
Yep. Yeah. So we had a pretty fun, uneventful, nobody fell in the fire or anything night. Everybody was pretty mellow. I think everybody was fairly tired from the day of wheeling. So everybody went, I mean, we were all in bed before midnight, I think.
Yeah.
We had wheels up at 8.
On Tuesday?
On Tuesday, a lot of people left some gear behind because the game plan was to get back to the same location. We made a base camp so you could leave stuff behind. And our goal was to wheel up to the top of Observation Point and then back to the camp.
Yep.
So wheels up at 8. I think we left shortly after 8.
Like 8:10, 8:15.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And as we were heading out, the very first obstacle there is this like S-turn sort of a scenario. You got to approach it turning left and then turn immediately right. And there's some really big rocks on the inside of that corner that a lot of people drive around. And
the outside of the corner.
And
the second corner.
Yeah, the apex or just past the apex of the second corner or something like that. I like to just drive over the big rocks in the middle.
Yeah.
I put my passenger tires on climbing up the big rocks, and it's easy for me to make the corner. Then I can make it all the way around, even be a little longer wheelbase. And I have the flex and I have low enough center of gravity that it's not too bad to go around that corner that way. So it worked out pretty well.
Nice.
Yeah. From there, we went up to the Martini Tree, and then we sent Brian down a little bit ahead. But while we were driving down, John Arns got on the radio looking for you.
Was at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was at that point.
It was? I don't remember.
So, yeah, John Arns asked you to check on...
Oh, yes. Okay.
You want to talk about what John said?
Yeah, sure. So our good buddy John Arns, he was on the Rubicon episode 220.
Yes.
He's the director for Rubicon Trail Foundation, and apparently he got an InReach notification from one of the caretakers.
Yeah.
And the GPS coordinates that he was given was in Big Sluice. And so he was reaching out to somebody on the trail, and I called out. I was like, "Hey, John, this is Tyler. How's it going?" And he goes, "Hey, I'm looking for Mark. I received a notification, an SOS signal from his InReach in Big Sluice." And I was like, "Well, I'm literally about to enter and start heading down Big Sluice. Do you want me to just check on it for you and make sure he's all good?" He goes, "Yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. Let me know what you guys need. If you need parts, anything like that." I was like, "Okay." And so we go down there and we found Mark.
Yeah.
He was chainsawing the squeeze tree from Big Sluice that was down across the trail, half of the trail. And so we kind of stopped and talked with him, and Mark goes, yeah, no, I'm good. I didn't hit anything.
Yeah.
All is well.
Yeah. Rig's fine. I'm fine. We're all good.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, okay.
And so we're like, okay. And well, we're just going to continue on then. He goes, you're not going to be able to continue on. They're doing some maintenance down below at the bottom of this section as well. It's Sawtooth.
Yep.
Which we learned is a new obstacle name I learned on this trip.
Yeah, me too.
And so he goes, yeah, they're doing maintenance down at Sawtooth. So, I mean, you guys can go, but you're going to have to wait down there. Instead of waiting down there, would you guys like to hang out here and help me get rid of some of the rounds that I'm cutting off here? We're like, hell yeah.
Yep.
And so we had 12, 13 guys, 14, something like that.
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
And so he was working on cutting up the tree because it was leaning up on the hill. And so he was cutting it all that was down in the trail into these, the tree at that point was 3 feet round?
Yeah.
2.5, 3 diameter
wise.
And then he was cutting them in about 2.5 foot sections.
Yeah, that varied, but yeah.
Yeah.
Some were wide, some were like 3 feet long, and some were like 12 inches long.
I remember Brian, tour guide Taco, was like, yeah, he was going to cut up some rounds and asked if we could help. I was like, okay, yeah. And me and him are both sitting there watching Mark cut the rounds, quote unquote. And he's cutting like 2.5, 3 foot sections. And Brian looks at me, he goes, his idea of a round and my idea of a round are two different things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they were heavy, even though that tree has been down for a while and dried for the most part. Those rounds were still heavy. They were big chunks of wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we pushed like 4 rounds to the far right side of the trail near the cliff side. And then we pushed 2 of the larger ones pretty much straight forward and kind of blocked off an area that I guess he didn't want people to go.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like, just roll those over there and block that area off.
Okay.
And so, and then he cut one more final round on the big sluice tree to open it up a little bit more. And then he went down below and there was another tree in the trail and he chopped like 3 more rounds off of that. And we helped him move those to the side as well.
Oh, okay.
And we literally pushed those off the side of the mountain, just down the hill.
Nice.
Yeah. And then, so that after that, or in the meantime, you went up onto the top of Big Sluice and you cut some chunks off of it.
I did. I cut, let's see, about 6 feet worth of tree off of the top end of the tree, not the top end, but the same end that I had cut the original rounds off of.
Right.
And so now we have another 6 feet worth of rounds that we can cut up and laser off of the big sluice tree and sell for fundraising opportunities for different off-road organizations. So, we have a couple more of those now. I haven't cut them up yet to see exactly how many rounds we're going to get out of it, but we have some more rounds though coming for the big sluice tree. And so after that, we headed on down, and Hussman is the first person officially to go back through the left side of the squeeze tree since 2019.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So as soon as that opened, he was like, I'm going through there. I'm going to be the first person that's been able to go through that route in a few years.
Yep.
So he was all excited about that. I was the first Toyota mini truck to go through it.
There you go. Huh?
Yeah. So that was interesting. I thought it was to some extent, I was like, I wonder if we post photos of it and say that we were there and we went through this, if people are going to be like, why'd you guys cut it? Why'd you guys cut that tree open? Yeah. And it's like, we showed up and the maintenance was already being done. Like the, RTF people were out there doing that. Yeah. Or giving permission to cut that off. Yeah. Make a better opening. Yeah. I don't know why. I honestly have no idea.
Why they cut it?
Yeah.
I think the main reason was because the tree was starting to get all dried up and old. So eventually it was going to come down because it was kind of suspended over that left side of the trail a little bit. Yeah. And so rather than just letting it come down on its own at a random time, might as well just take it down now in a controlled environment, and so it doesn't hurt anybody when it does come down. Yeah, maybe. That'd be my guess. Yeah. That's the only thing I think of.
There's a safety side of things. Yeah. Because to me, it's like, why don't you just, that's now a blocked part of the obstacle. Now everybody has to go over here and do this side of the obstacle. And in a way, I feel like the route that got opened is easier than the squeeze side of things.
Really? You think so?
Yeah.
I think the route that got open is harder than the squeeze one. But then again, I'm on
The squeeze.
I'm on Toyota axles. It can just kind of squeeze right through without it doing anything.
Yeah. That's sort of my, I think that the squeeze side, it's a straight shot. Like you just go straight. You just have to try to be inside of now a wall of roots and a rock. Right. So if you can't fit, then you have to figure out a way to get through it.
Yeah.
Where the other way is you drop off the root lines and then you turn like almost 90 degrees to the passenger side around a rock, and then you drop off the rock and you're done. I don't feel it's all that more difficult.
Interesting. Maybe it was just the line Hussman took, because I didn't see what line you took through there, but watching Hussman in the buggy go through that, I mean, he got...
Yeah, Hussman took a more aggressive line.
Okay, because I was looking at it, I was like, I'm not going to make my Forerunner try and do that.
Everybody said that. Everybody's like, oh, I'm going to go that route now. And then everybody saw Hussman go through it. Yeah. And Hussman went to the spot where it had the biggest drop off. He went to the spot where it his driver's side rear tire fell like 4 or 5 feet down to the ground.
Yeah.
No, I turned all the way around the rock and dropped off a ledge that was like 1.5 feet, 2 feet.
Gotcha. Okay. Because he kind of went, instead of turning, he kind of went straight through it.
Right.
And so one tire was 5 feet in the air, and the other tire was 5 feet down on the ground. I was like, I can't do that in the Forerunner.
Everybody else behind him was like, well, I'm not going to go that way now. I'm like, no, that way's easier.
Okay.
But I never to go through it.
Like stop and take a close look at that.
Yeah. I wanted to go through it because it was reopened and new, and it was like 2-3 people, 1 to 3 people. No, I think 1, 2, and I might have been third to go through that line, maybe second to go through that line.
I think you were second. I think James was third.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that was it.
So, but yeah, so that was interesting. Also by that, so we had the Rob's Welds Taco in our group, and then Lee and some of these other rigs that care more about their body and body work than some of us, and they were going through the squeeze section, taking a little bit of time. And so Hustle Nuts, my buddy Dave, Forerunner Dave, and Jacob, he has the first gen, your old first gen. Should we assume that people have listened to episode 1 or part 1 of this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So you already know all the rigs.
Yep.
Kind of motored on ahead, and they were already down through Sawtooth, down through whatever that part is below Sawtooth.
Yeah, I want to know what that is.
I don't know what name. I thought that was Sawtooth.
Yeah.
And then there was the rocky section below that, and I think they were on the bridge, if not past the bridge, into Rubicon Springs by the time we were at... Yeah, they were already in Rubicon Springs by the time we were at that rocky...
The turn that we thought was Sawtooth.
Yeah, the rocky sort of ledge turn after Sawtooth before the rocky downhill to the bridge.
Yeah.
And they told us that there was 3 rigs coming at us that are pretty well equipped. And we said, okay, we'll hang out after this section before the rocky section. There's plenty of open space right here for us to all pull off on the side, and we'll be good. And wait for these rigs to come up. And then we waited for a little bit. Yeah. Like it took a while for the rigs to get to us. I don't know how far they were ahead or what, but the rigs that I walked up ahead and walked all the way, walked almost all the way to the bridge. Well, no, not that far, but and then I saw a 4-door Taco on 60s and like 40s rolling up. I'm like, oh, he's fine. Yep. So I started talking to that guy, and I was like, cool, yeah, there's like 7-8 rigs back there. No, yeah, about 8 or 9 rigs back there waiting for you guys to come through. So, continue on. He's like, cool. And then I realized that he was handicapped. Yeah. And he had this like hand push throttle that pushed down on the pedal.
The throttle and the brake. Yeah, it was had a little cantilever into it.
Oh, so how, I didn't see how the brakes worked.
It was really pretty cool the way it was set up. So, yeah, he was paraplegic, so couldn't use either of his legs, and so he had this mechanism that went in and was U-bolted to his pedals, and both of the arms came up to a cantilevered lever that when he pushed it one way, it pushed down on the gas. When he pulled it towards him, it pushed down on the brake.
Got it.
And so he was able to control both of them off of this one little lever.
And so if it was neutral, horizontal, would he not be on the gas and not be on the brake?
Exactly. Yep. And then if he wanted to push both of them at the same time, he grabbed at the pivot point of it and just pushed the whole thing in.
Oh,
rather than holding the lever out at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting to see, him go through. And it was, at first I noticed he had wheelchairs in the back. And then I realized the driver used one of the wheelchairs.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah. Those guys were super cool. I sat and talked with them for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
While their Jeep buddy was working his way up.
Yeah.
They're from Fresno area. So they go wheeling out at the Shaver Lake Red Mountain trails all the time.
Oh, cool.
And they wanted to come up and, they do the Rubicon every once in a while. I think once a year they said, but they've never done Barrett.
Oh.
And they really want to come do Barrett. So I told them, I said, here's my contact info. When you guys, I'll, just keep in contact with me. And whenever Barrett opens, we'll get you guys up here and I'm going to take them through Barrett.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah, they're super cool guys.
Yeah. And I think the Toyota in the front and the Toyota in the back were friends.
I think so as well.
But the Jeep in the middle, they just met.
Oh, really?
At Rubicon Springs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense
and
then.
So they were kind of like, no, you're good. We can get you out to Buck Island Lake. And so this guy in the middle, it was a Jeep JK Sahara. Four-door, like 35s, all-terrain tires, and locked in the rear.
Locked in the rear. Open in the front.
Open front.
Trying to come up Big Sluice.
Well, yeah.
The boulder section.
The boulder section but between Big Sluice and the bridge.
Yeah. You don't consider that Big Sluice?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a thing. I
don't know what the name of that is.
I've always
considered... If there's
considered
another obstacle name in the middle of it, then I don't think you can consider it all Big Sluice.
See, I've always considered Big Sluice to be the stretch from when you're coming down the downhill from Martini Tree, you make the big left-hand turn. That spot there all the way to the end of the boulder section
that we're talking about.
I always considered that whole thing Big Sluice.
Right.
But yeah, that would mean that little ledge thing in the middle or sawtooth is
still Big Sluice.
Is still in Big Sluice. So
right. I think if you introduce another name of another obstacle, everything after that can't be a previous obstacle.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't. Once again, I don't know. I don't know what that name is. Somebody asked me that when we were heading back, and somebody that was those. What were they? They were the Jeeps that were coming through. They're like, what's the name of that obstacle? Like, man, I don't. It could be Big Sluice. It could be Sawtooth. I could have another name that I don't know. Man,
we're gonna have to get John Arns or Merlin on the show or something to go over obstacle names.
That'd be nice. So the Jeep took 45 minutes.
A long time
to get up to get up that boulder pile.
It's about 200 feet, 300 feet of boulders.
100 yards.
100 yards, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. He got stuck on the first big rock before even the corner.
Okay.
Because I was down talking to the other Toyota who it was like a Toyota mini truck, dove nose, dove tail, big axles, big tires, looked badass, had a big old dog in the back, and I was talking to him about his dog. And I look up and there's this big rock and the guy's stuck on it. And he's not even to the corner to head up the mountain yet. I'm like, oh, this is going to take a while. It's going to be rough.
Yeah. So two funny things from that point in time. When you went down to hike down and see where the rigs were, because we were all sitting there in the middle of the boulder pile waiting oh, we're going to get a show. Nobody was showing up. And so you went hiking to figure out where they were.
Yeah.
And, Tom said, okay, I have the other handheld radio. I'll wait here and you radio to us and let us know what's going on.
Yes.
And so you took off hiking and then I turned around. I think I was talking to, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody behind me. It might've been, I think it was Ray. And I turned back around and Tom was gone. He ended up following you down the trail. So we're all sitting there well, I guess we're not going to know how long it's going to take. We're just going to hang out here until people show back up.
Yeah.
So Tom taking off when he said that he was going to be the radio comms to keep everybody informed what's going on. I thought that was funny. And then the second thing was, like I said, I was up talking to the paraplegics for 20, 25 minutes and nobody's coming up the boulder pile. No one's coming around the corner. So finally I'm like, I'm going to go figure out what's going on. And so I go walk around the corner. First thing I see when I walk around the corner is this grumpy grill up in the air. And I was like, oh, that explains it all then.
Yeah.
That's just all I thought. That I came over and I was like, hey, how's it going? They're like, oh, Grumpy Grill's not going very far. I was like, that's what was my conclusion as well.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because people said that and I didn't even notice because I was so concerned about getting just Jeep out of the way.
Yeah.
So that we could continue down the trail. And during the meantime, by this time, Hussman, Dave, and Jacob had made it to the slabs in the waterfall past Rubicon Springs a little bit.
Yep.
And they're like, how you guys doing? And we're like, we're still here.
We haven't moved at all.
We are waiting for these rigs to come up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like hindsight, we really should have just gone down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we thought that they were capable rigs and being able to make it.
We thought they were capable, and we thought that the second and third gen Tacomas in our group were going to have trouble getting down the boulder field.
Right.
So we're like, we think we're going to struggle a little bit, so let's let the other group come up first and get through before we take up all the time to get everyone down.
Yeah. And
how did that go?
Going back down?
Yeah, getting our group down through there.
It was freaking like butter.
Right?
Some of it might have been because there was pretty much a road had to be paved to get this Jeep up.
Mm-hmm.
The other half would be that we had gravity on our side going downhill and, maybe you do high center yourself a little bit, but gravity will push you the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had absolutely no problem sliding down that mountain.
I think that Ray and Rob actually took butter and buttered up the underside of their vehicle, so they just slid down.
That could be.
Yeah.
Full kudos to Ray and Rob in the second gen pickup and the third gen Toyota pickup. Outstanding drivers. They're like, they can drive and they have like capable rigs, but they're not built like specifically for the Rubicon. But the fact that they are good drivers, they were able to have no problems really on the Rubicon at all.
The only place they had issue was Little Sluice.
Yeah.
And that's just because Little Sluice is all about ground clearance. If you don't have the ground clearance, you're not getting through there.
Right. And that was their big issue, was they didn't have a ton of ground clearance. So massive kudos to those guys and being able to do everything. So anyway, we cruised down. We cruised all the way for the most part through the Rubicon Springs. We took a stop at the Rubicon Springs and we gave a little tour to the people that have never been there and a tour to the people that had been there because everybody sort of hung out. The first thing we showed them was the first sort of springs that looked really mucky.
It was really mucky. Yeah.
It looked bad.
That was less of a spring and more of like that little spot divot in the ground went just below the water table right there.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But
yeah, it looked bad. And then we showed him the bar and how the ladies signed the bar. And then we went to the second water springs. And that's sort of between the bar and the VIP camping area.
Yep.
And we showed him that one, and that one looked cleaner. And I actually hiked down. I walked down to the springs, climbed down a little ways, skimmed off the top, and stuck a bottle in there, and we all got to sample the spring water. And I haven't had any problem. My digestion tract hasn't had any problems from it.
I've been good.
Yep. But the water definitely is carbonated, but super irony.
Very irony.
Very minerally, very high iron content.
Well, that's the health getting into your body.
Yeah, that's I'm now cured of every ail, and I have amazing vitality. So now all I need to do is swim in that thing, and I'll like be 24 again.
Create a little hot tub out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see. So then we went to the VIP area, and you showed the plaque wall. There's this like I don't know how many. 30 plaques up on the wall.
Yeah, it's probably close to that, if not more. Or less.
Significant people that did some significant things for the Rubicon, like massive, not just going and doing trail maintenance. You either donated a lot of money or a lot of time, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Let's see. From there, we showed them where all the new picnic tables and everything they're getting ready for Jeepers Jamboree that are going up. And then we went and looked at the creek, and then we went to look at the old footings for where the hotel used to be, which there's still a lot of them. There's still at least, you can see at least a dozen.
Yep.
And there's probably some under the cabin.
Porch.
Yeah, the porch in the cabin. And then I showed you something that you've never seen before down there.
I don't remember now.
The high water line from 1997.
Oh, yes.
It's like 4 feet up on the cabin. So like the entire Rubicon Springs would have been 4 feet underwater.
From that little creek that goes right next to there. Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. I looked at that high water line, and then I immediately looked over towards the helipads and tried to envision that entire area just underwater, where like that water line would have been on the helipad rocks.
Yeah. It would have been a small lake or a big pond right there. Yeah, and so that's kind of fun to see and see how high it is. And you like stand there and you look around and you're like, I would be pretty much underwater completely right now.
Yeah.
You know, and the creek is 4 feet below where we were standing.
The water line of the creek, yeah.
Yeah. So it had the water line of the creek went up 8 vertical feet, but the valley there is
2 football fields across.
I was going to say a quarter mile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, I think pretty much when we were leaving, or at some point, we got a report that Dave and Hussman found an issue with Jacob's Forerunner. I don't remember when that was, but pretty much by the time we caught up to them, they had solved the problem.
Yep.
What was the problem?
The leaf spring hanger on the front driver leaf spring, so underneath the radiator support, had ripped off the frame.
Yeah.
So his front leaf spring was just kind of hanging there. It wasn't really attached to the frame anymore.
No. He said his articulation felt great, though.
Are you right? Yeah.
So who knows how long it was going on.
I don't know.
His lady, Hannah, said that she's been hearing a weird banging noise for a while, and Jacob sort of said, yeah, that's sort of normal. But who knows how long that it's been cracked or broken or anything. So, but I think Husband pulled out his Carnage welder and, you know, they ground it down and cleaned it up, and it was solved by the time we got there.
Yep.
By the time we got there, we wanted to eat lunch because we were planning on eating lunch at the top of Observation Point. But, you know, just as the Rubicon goes, you know, you stop and help people, move some trees off the way. You stop and wait for people to go through an obstacle. We were a solid hour, 2 hours behind where we expected to be.
Yep.
So people made lunch. People went swimming. People were impatient. And eventually everybody got back together and we decided, all right, let's head up to Observation Point. Let's drive up Cadillac Hill and drive up to Observation Point. At that point, Hustle Nuts and Dave said that they don't want to go. They're just going to go back to camp and relax. We're like, okay, you guys are perfectly qualified and capable.
I'm really glad they did in hindsight.
Yep, me too.
And we'll get to that in a bit.
Yep. So we took off, and it took us an hour, just like 2 minutes under an hour to go from the slabs with the waterfall camping area to the top of Observation Point.
Yep. That's pretty good time. The fastest I've done it from the slabs up to the top observation is about 40 minutes, between 40 and 45.
Yeah.
I average usually about an hour. So it was, everybody did great.
Yeah. It was uneventful.
Yeah. Very uneventful.
Just put it along. Had a few people hung up on diffs. You know, a few people articulated out.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
I got hung up on my diff.
Yep. When, you know, and a few people taking some fun lines in different areas, and we got up there pretty easily. Yeah.
This was one of the times we sent tour guide Taco out ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
So
I think that's genius, especially on that obstacle on Cadillac Hill, because there's nowhere to pass.
No,
you've got to back
not
up.
at all.
And if there's 10 rigs heading up the trail and 10 rigs heading down the trail, you know, yield to
uphill traffic.
Yeah. But
so the people up at the top have to back all the way up till you get to a passing spot.
Yeah. So sending one person ahead, quite a little ways ahead, you know, like I'm at this turn. Okay. We're just now starting, you know, was really nice to have to let us know what was going to happen if anything was coming. So
turns out nobody was coming down.
No.
Well, once, right as Brian got to observation point up at the top, he ran into another group of 3 rigs that we had heard was supposed to be coming down Cadillac, which is why we sent Brian up.
Yes.
To try and stop them. And he literally got to the top just as they were like climbing in their rigs to come down. He had to stop and be like, whoa, hold on, we got like 8-9 rigs coming up. And turns out Brian follows one of the guys on Instagram.
Yeah, another Land Cruiser guy.
Land Cruiser FJ40 guy who had a really nice built FJ40.
Yes, he did.
And so Brian was like, that was awesome. I got to sit there and talk with him about his rig. And, I'm still working on mine. It makes me want to like go home tonight rather than camping with you guys so I could work on the rig tomorrow. I was like, Brian.
Yeah. So they waited, I don't know, 20 minutes,
maybe
30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. And then we got up to the top, no problem. At that point, the tacos and the Gladiator were gonna go, like, decided to go home. And so we were kind of up there. We all lined up. We snapped some photos. We had a drink. We're saying our goodbyes. And in the middle of that, we got a message. Somebody was reaching out on the radio for us, and it was Dave. I guess I don't know where. Do you know where it happened?
I don't know where it happened.
Somewhere on their way back, Dave blew up his passenger side hub. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, does anybody have cone washers? We need cone washers. I think we can figure out how to put it all together, but I don't have any cone washers. And I was like, well, I have a whole flange kit. So regardless, if we just have the studs and some nuts, we can put this flange kit on and, and you'll be locked permanently, but you can drive,
but you'll have four-wheel drive.
Yeah. Or all 4-wheel drives, not a 3-tire fire. So Jacob Gleghorn ended up having 4 full set studs, cone washers, lock washers, and nuts.
Can I just give an MVP shout out to Jacob?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, please do.
Every single time anybody had any issue on the trip, it seemed like Jacob had the part to fix it.
I think he had a whole entire Forerunner in the back of his truck.
Yeah.
That Forerunner was packed.
Yeah.
Packed.
It was packed, yes.
Yeah.
But he had every single time someone's were like, hey, does anybody got cone washers? Hey, does anybody got fuses? Hey, does anybody got wire? Has anybody got this or that or this? And he's like, oh yeah, I got that. I got some. I got this. I got that.
Well, it was funny when we were at the Glenn's tree, you were broken down.
I don't think we talked about that.
I think we did.
Not my electrical issue and melting some fuse. God, was I just literally asleep?
I think you were.
Okay.
Regardless, so Tyler got to this spot where Glenn from RTF usually hangs out, and Tyler's rig died, when he stopped, and so there was a fuse issue on the back, and Jacob hopped underneath and was talking about what to do, and you guys were figuring out the solution, and you guys were done. You guys figured it out pretty quick, and I was like, Jacob, what do you do for a living? He's like, I'm like a low voltage electrician. Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, that explains it. Why you have all the electrical components anybody might need.
Yes.
And you're diving under the rigs to solve the electrical problems. So yeah, that was funny. So yeah, he definitely. He was the MVP. I would say that, he was the disaster MVP. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So he had spare parts. He was considering going home, but they decided not to. They decided to come back, him and his lady, Hannah. We're going to drive all the way back down and go camp with us another night. So
that was Hannah's first trip ever tent camping.
And her first time ever 4-wheeling.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
What a trip to have.
Yeah.
A first sub.
I was like, she kind of just got spoiled. Every other trip from now on is just going to be like, oh, why isn't it like the Rubicon?
Yeah. It'll be like, yeah, we're going so much faster. And, oh, there's all, so much more food to eat. No, we didn't have any food, but yeah.
At least she might be able to use her door on future trips.
Maybe. So. Yeah. If Jacob fixes that, he has to push down his rock slider a little bit. Yeah. So does Lee. So
yeah.
Let's see. So right as we were deciding, after we got that phone call, we kind of just the ham radio call from Dave saying he broke, but they're going to limp it back to camp. And they're going to start fixing it there, and we'll come back and We'll give them the parts. We decided we were going to take off, but then you got another message.
We got another call on the ham radio
from Brian
Bettencourt.
Brian, that was Brian Bettencourt?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brian messaged you and he said, hey, you guys in, are you coming down Cadillac? And
Yeah.
we're like, well, we're considering leaving. He's like, oh, well, we're just about to head up.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, come on up. And he's like, we're pulling a trailer. We're like, okay, come on up.
It was funny. We had this conversation about, hey, is there anybody on Cadillac? And I'm like, well, we're at observation and we were considering coming down. He goes, oh, well, we're heading up right now and I've got a trailer. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, it should be all clear for you. And he goes, okay, thanks. And I said, yeah, just watch out for the 3 rigs in the middle somewhere on their way down. And then there was just silence from him. And I was like, I'm just kidding, Brian. There's nobody coming down. He goes, okay, good. Because I was like, I was very confused because you just said it was clear, but now you're saying there's 3 rigs on. I was like, I'm totally just kidding. Come on up. He goes, okay, I'll see you soon.
Yeah. It took them a little while to get up there. It was like 2 Jeeps and one was pulling a trailer or something like that. Took them a little bit to get up there.
Yeah, it gave me and Lee enough time to play around with stuff underneath the Gladiator.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, Nick, don't go crawling around the Gladiator. There's some, well, I guess you can. There might be some presents under there for you.
There you go. Cool. Yeah, so before they got up to the top, they didn't want to get stuck behind the trailer on their way out. So the Tacomas and the Gladiator took off. And I got to drive around in tour guide Taco for a little bit just to experience another rig, just drive up a few walls. He's 3 linked in the front and an automatic with dual cases. So it's just
he's not 3. It's radius armed.
Radius
in the
armed.
front.
Thank you. Yeah, radius armed in the front, linked to some extent. Radius arms and just a different setup. So it's fun to kind of just feel the suspension work and
much lower. He's like 6 inches lower than Bobcat 7.
Yeah, it'll be. That's kind of where I want Samantha.
Yeah,
that's how I want Samantha to sit.
Yeah.
So I wonder, Brian, what is your belly height? I want to know. So eventually they got up to the top and we drove pretty much all the way back to camp.
Nope, we had one stop. Brian found a point of interest.
That's right. But I was thinking uneventful. Like nobody broke, nobody really hit. Yeah. So as we were driving down Cadillac, we were talking about the actual Cadillac, where it is. Has anybody seen it? Do we know where it's at? And Brian said he thought he knew where it was, and he's seen it on like TV before, or YouTube or whatever. And so all of us got down to the bottom, and then all of a sudden Brian comes over the radio and goes, "I found it!
I found it! Everybody come back up!"
Yeah. And so we're like, okay, we're gonna hike up.
Yeah.
So we walked up there, and we saw the old Cadillac off to the side. Not where I expected it to be.
Not where I expected.
I expected it to find the Cadillac at the top of observation point. Like it's just over the hill. Okay. Like these people drove off Observation Point, right?
Oh, is that the story? I don't even know the story behind it. Like how it ended up there.
I think the people drove off Observation Point. I think that's, I don't know why they did it or what, but I don't know if they were running from the law or it was what's the Harry Met Sally or whatever scenario. Is that the one where the lovers drive off the cliff?
I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot what that. So I expected like it to be 40, 60 feet below Observation Point. Okay. But it was way farther than that. It was almost to the bottom, just shortly after the hairpin, but between the hairpin and the other trail down below. So we found it. So we all hiked up and saw that. It was cool. Yeah. It was, and it was backwards.
It was the nose of it was facing directly uphill and the butt end was facing directly downhill, like vertically with the hill.
So it either spun around somewhere or flipped over and spun at some point on the way down that mountain. So, or they were trying to drive up a crazy angle. One of
those.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun to see.
Yep. Got some pictures of it. It was neat.
Yep. I don't think anything happened on the way back. I think we made it pretty uneventfully.
We made it down Cadillac in like 25 minutes.
He popped on the way down, he blew a bead.
That was over at Big Sluice.
Yeah. Well, sort of. It was after Sawtooth.
Yes. After Sawtooth and that ledge area.
Big Sluice. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. He popped a bead off his tire and then was able to reseat the bead by turning his steering wheel. Oh. It was fascinating. Me and Nick were sitting there like, all right, let's get out a jack, and we got to get the rig to a semi-flat spot and then jack it up and push on the tire and blah, blah, blah. And Lee was turning to get the rig level somewhat in a flat space, and the tire reseated itself, and both Nick and I go,
Stop.
Yeah, we looked at each other. We're like, stop right there. We're just going to put air in it now. Like, then we looked at each other like, we've never seen that happen before.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think I can't recall of anything happening on the way back.
I don't think so. Not coming down Cadillac through the Springs, back into Big Sluice.
To the caretaker for a split second.
Talked to Mark a little bit. Yeah.
Continued on. Everybody, we did have to winch somebody up that rock garden. Lee.
Yeah.
We had to winch Lee up that little one ledge in the rock garden.
Mm-hmm.
But then he drove up Lee had the power steering overflow
that's what
on
it
the
was.
way up Big Sluice after the squeeze tree.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was trying to come literally through the squeeze part, right?
Yeah.
And he just started dumping power steering fluid. ATF is what he used for his power steering. So started dumping ATF, and I'm like, whoa, stop. You are done. Shut the rig off.
Yeah.
We got to see what's going on here. And the reservoir was empty pretty much, and we couldn't figure out where it was leaking from. So we just refilled it and then let him continue. And he got 20 yards, 15 yards or so, and then started spewing all over the ground again. And we're like, what is going on? And that's when we just kind of stopped then, and we're like, okay, now we got to find this.
Yeah.
And so turns out he had bolts loose in the top of his steering box.
Yeah, well, it was it's that main sector shaft bolt.
Yeah, the tensioner, sector shaft tension.
That one was super loose. So he reached in and he started to try to turn it, and it was loose enough that it was very easy to spin, but he was also spinning the tensioner, the sector shaft.
Yeah, the bolt inside.
So then we got a screwdriver, and then I held it, and then he tightened it. And I think it had to have done at least one full rotation.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the fluid was coming out there. And I think was it Jacob Gleghorn that spotted that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dude, we need that guy on every run.
Right?
And so, yeah, he found that. And then at that point, some rigs were going to come down. And then so we had to shimmy the rigs around so that we could have good trail etiquette and not block the trail. And in the meantime, Lee and I buttoned his rig back together. And then when he started it and he turned and no fluid was coming out, so it was really just a weird, odd loose bolt that was with some hot power steering fluid that came out. Topped it off the power steering fluid, and he cranked it back and forth a few times, so it kind of bleed it, and then we were on our way.
Nice. Yep. And that was about all the drama.
Yeah, I think so. From there to camp, I don't think we.
Yeah, from there back to camp, everything was pretty smooth. We got into camp fairly late. I mean, we started the trek up Cadillac Hill at like 2 p.m.
Yeah,
something like that. So
yeah, it was 1:20, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm kicking my butt, kind of. I wanted to write down anytime we stopped where we were and the time.
Oh, that would have been kind of interesting.
Chronologically keep track of our trip.
Yeah.
Lee said that he could pull all the data off because he was tracking us on Gaia.
Oh, okay.
And so every time we stop or whatever, he said he could figure that out. But I was like, if I just had a pad of paper, I could have done it.
Yeah. I think we pulled back into camp around 7.
Yeah. 7 p.m.
7 p.m., somewhere right around there. So that ended up being a longer day than I thought it was going to be. I was planning on us being back at camp at 4 to 5, maybe 3 if we were lucky, maybe 6 if we were unlucky.
Yeah.
And it was 7 when we got back, 7:30, something like that. So
yeah, it was a long day.
Yeah.
Everybody was tired. I think we pretty much, Brian pulled out a shower. And that was nice. But everybody washed up in the lake. Some of us took a quick shower. I went swimming for a split second. We all made food, and a lot of us went to bed.
Yeah.
And then a few of us stayed up, had a few drinks, and then that's when we recorded episode 1.
Yep. And I went to bed.
And you went to bed in the
middle of the recording.
So
yeah.
And then we finished the recording before 11, and I think we were all in bed by 11. So
yep.
Yeah, it was a pretty mellow night. I think we were all very tired from just driving around. In the meantime, when we got back to camp, Dave had the rig completely torn apart. Jacob Gleghorn had the screw extractors from GearWrench that we gave him because we had that award that he won, and we were just holding on to it to see him on the trip, so we gave it to him. So Dave got to use the screw extractors to pull out the broken studs.
So do you remember what else we gave him?
Didn't we give him his gift box?
Do you remember what was in it?
Not really.
The welding. It was the welding gift box.
Oh.
And so he opened it up, like, I think on observation, at the top observation, he opens it up and goes, "Oh, I could have used this stuff when they were welding my leaf spring hanger back on."
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's right. I forgot that was in there. I would have told you to open it.
Forgot.
Yeah.
That's funny. So for some odd reason, his box got returned. His gift box that we sent out. And so we held his gift box and we held that screw extractor set and gave it to him when we saw him. So he had all these extra tools, and then he had the parts. And so Dave buttoned his rig up in like 40 minutes once we got back.
Yeah.
No
once he had all the parts, he was rolling and rolled right through everything, got it all put back together.
Yeah. So he was
permanent trail repair.
Yep. Permanent trail repair for the most part. So he'll be, I think he needs to put one more stud in, or he had something. I think he's missing a cone washer. And so one of the studs, he just put the bolt back on top.
Oh, I see.
But it doesn't have a cone in it.
Cone washer. Yeah. So I was, afterwards I was talking with Hessman about what had happened. And he said, essentially he sheared off the studs. The hub was completely fine.
Yeah.
It was the studs that sheared off. And I was like, hey, when I did that, I ended up drilling and tapping the 7/16 bolts into it, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, Dave, you ever thought about doing that? And he goes, no, I haven't heard of that before. And I was like, oh, it's actually a fairly common thing, I guess, for Toyotas to shear off those studs because we got so many torques. And if you re-drill them and tap them for 7/16 bolts, you can end up having this like really high shear strength bolts in there, and 6 of them. And he goes, that might not be a bad idea because the guy I got these axles from, literally like the month before I got him, I think, or something like that. He goes, last time he was in Moab with him, that's when it was. The guy sheared the same hub studs off of that set of axles.
Oh.
So those hub studs have been sheared off twice now.
Oh, wow.
On that set of axles.
Interesting. Yeah. So maybe that is something Dave will do. Maybe I'll do that on Samantha too.
I think it'd be really good to show because it's apparently a common thing people do, but nobody ever talks about it as a common thing. Yeah. But you start asking people around and they're like, oh yeah, I've changed out my hub studs for 7/16 bolts. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it'd be good to show. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to do that. So pretty much the next morning we were up and rolling. Everybody was back together. All rigs were working at that point. So we had wheels up at 8 again, but we were not as rushed in the morning, I guess. And so we left about 8:30 after everybody packed up and, put out a fire and let's see, we got to tree line. I parked up in the trees the night before. I was parked down by the water the first night, but I was at the end of the line. And by the time I was driving in to get to my parking spot, the fire was already going because Jason and Dave were there. That's right. And everybody else had pretty much pulled into camp, and there was no real room for me to squeeze through everything to get to the place where I was camped before. So I just reversed back and parked on the upper section of we kind of talked about earlier. And I was fine back there. It was no problem. I just had to walk 20 feet. 40 feet to get to my tent at the night. Yeah, something like that. But that also meant that you got to be tour guide Jimmy on the way out. Tour guide Jimmy on the way out. I was leading the group since I reversed out and I was the first one out of the area and drove out of there and did the little sharp turn to get out and did this little climb and then did that, drove around Lee's Rock or Lee Hill. Lee Hill. I like Lee Hill. Yeah. Drove around Lee Hill and dropped off the little skid plane right above tree line and then dropped down tree line and then I heard my power steering going not being happy. And I was like, what the hell is going on? So I hopped out and I went to look at it, and when I hopped out, went to look under my engine, and the whole underside of my engine was wet. Wet with fluids.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
And I think I radioed back, and I was like, I'm dead in the water. Something's up with my power steering. And so I was in the middle of the trail, right where everybody needed to go. So I still had steering, right? Because I still had the mechanical side. And so I reversed back into a level spot that put me sort of in the middle of the obstacle, but it was people could go.
Choosable obstacle.
There's like obstacle. 4 lines, and I took one of the lines away.
Yeah.
And so, pretty much next down the line was Hussman, and next down the line after that was Dave. And so, and I said, I think I broke the line, my hydraulic line that goes from my power steering box to my hydraulic ram.
Okay.
And I said, I think it's broken right here.
Okay.
Like I can feel the fraying of the, metal. I'm like, let me hop in the rig. Let me start it. Let me turn. And you tell me if fluid comes out.
Okay.
They're like, okay,
that's fair.
And so I turned it on, and I turned passenger. And they're like, yeah, I don't see anything. Turn the other way. And I turned driver, and they're like, stop. They're like, it was freaking, this geyser of fluid flying out. They're like, it's definitely broken right there where you said it was. I'm like, okay, good.
Listening to Dave explain it was hilarious.
Oh yeah, because
Dave is such a straight-faced kind of guy, very dry sense of humor, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, we told him to turn one way, and he turns one way, and we're like, yeah, we don't really see anything leaking. And so we're like, yeah, go ahead, try the other way. And he just starts barely like thinking about turning the other way. And all of a sudden this geyser come out. We're like, stop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never seen Dave that animated before.
Yeah. It was pretty good. Yeah. Made a pretty good mess. But we got like 3 diapers out. There's like 3 of those absorbent pads came out. We had one at the start, and it was like starting to soak through it. So much fluid was coming down. And so we laid another one down, and then we started messing with it. Like I undid the one on the ram pretty easily, a lot of access underneath there. Undid that, and then all the fluid was coming down from the power steering box, so it was just making this mess on the diaper. And then when we undid the one above that attaches to the power steering box, a lot of fluid was coming out there too. So we threw another one on the driver's side, like underneath the frame. So yeah, we were making a mess, but we were keeping it as clean as freaking possible. But I had a spare hose and maybe minus a stubby 17 millimeter wrench. I think I had all the tools and everything to. Did
Jacob have a stubby 17 millimeter?
I don't think so. Hussman did, Jacob, but we never got it out.
Okay.
Somebody gave us a small adjustable wrench.
Well, Hussman is known for his stubby. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Yep. And so got it repaired, but we knew that our crowd wasn't the fastest of wheelers. So we told you guys why don't you guys continue on?
Yeah.
I was broken. Hussman was there. My buddy Dave was there. Hussman, Dave, and I have been wheeling since high school together. We know each other really well. We're half the time when we were broken, they were making fun of me.
Yeah.
And the other half the time they were just teasing me.
Yeah.
It was, the old school, like good old times came out very quickly. And then Brian was there with us too, hanging back, our tail gunner taco now in this case. And so we got it buttoned up pretty quick, maybe a half an hour. 45 minutes. Maybe.
It didn't take you that long. I mean, when you guys said you were going again, we had just reached the other end of Buck Island. Like we were just leaving the camping area and looking for that bypass for the V-notch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the shelf bypass, not the other one we found.
Yeah. You guys came across the radio and said, we're at the V. Maybe we should wait for them. And I think I came across the radio and said, we're done. We're packing up. We're on the move. You guys keep moving.
Yeah. You'll catch us. Yeah. We'll catch you guys.
And so our goal was to catch you before Arnold's Rock.
Yeah. And that's right about where you guys caught us, right at pretty much at Glenn's Tree, I think is where you guys caught us. Yeah.
And we caught, pretty much at Glenn's Tree, we caught up and we caught James with his hood up.
Yeah. Which was, so when we were getting ready to take off at Glenn's Tree, it was me, Lee, Jacob, and James.
Yep.
And so I knew that James didn't have a radio. His radio had died. And so we're all getting in the rig and everybody's in their rigs ready, but I couldn't see James anywhere. And so I radioed. I was like, hey guys, is James behind you ready to go too? And there was no answer. And I was like, okay, I'm going to assume no news is good news. And so we just took off, and that's 100% my fault. I was like, I should have stayed and waited to confirm.
Yeah.
But then
I also, far.
But yeah, then I also knew that you guys were pretty damn close to us.
Yeah.
So I was like, and I know, and I have good faith. James has Justin Hall's old truck.
Yeah, we just found that out.
Which was fun to find out. And I knew that James was, from watching him all the first 2 days, I was like, he knows how to pick lines. He knows how to wheel.
Yeah, he was really good.
He was very good.
I think that truck is newish to him, and he did some work to it. Like I think he had to put a new transmission and stuff in it as well.
That's right. He did say that.
And so he isn't familiar with that rig, but Bobcat and that rig are built nearly identical.
Pretty much, yeah.
And so for the last 2 days, he was following me. And that's what he told me. He's like, I'm going to wheel behind you because our rigs are so similar that whatever your rig can do, my rig can do.
Yep.
And I think James, I don't know him that well, but he has a Trail Queen Samurai.
Yes.
So
trailer queen.
A trailer queen.
Yeah.
Trailer queen Samurai. A samurai that's not street legal, that it can only is like for trails. So he can wheel. But I didn't really know him or know it, that well. And so I kind of assumed that he didn't know that well how to wheel, and he had a new rig, but he figured, well, my rig's built similar to Bobcat, so I should be able to do that.
It's a very different world coming from a Samurai to 127-inch wheelbase.
Oh, yeah, 124,
mini truck.
127, somewhere in there.
Yeah, a little bit different.
So later I found out that he wheels.
Yeah.
And so then I started just doing all the normal fun, more aggressive lines that I would normally do.
Yep.
And I think it was even Whalebones on the way in when Rob's Taco was up on top of Whalebones, smashing his pinion protector down, which is sort of ironic. But and so I did the off-camber line that leans you towards the rock. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of close. I'm leaning in. But it's so off camera. I'm like, I don't like it, know? Well, James went up and he did an even higher line.
Yep.
He did it. And I was like, okay, well, this guy is more comfortable at an off angle than I am. And there was a few times I looked back and I was like, he is way more off camber than I was in my rig. And he's totally fine at it. And so, on that trip, I realized that James is actually a really good wheeler and his rig's perfectly capable on everything that Bobcat could do. So I just started like, okay, we're going to go do the buggy line over here. We're going to go do all these fun lines.
We're going to squeeze at Arnold's Rock.
Yeah, we're going to squeeze there. Exactly. And so, so when you left him or, when the group left him, we caught up and his engine just got hot coming up Indian Hill.
Gotcha.
So he had the hood up. He was running the vehicle. He's just cooling everything down.
Okay.
And when we caught him, he's like, no, actually everything's cool. Now I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Nice. So it wasn't even that far.
Okay.
And then by that time, I think we caught up to you fairly quickly after that. And then there's the V-notch. And then shortly after the V-notch, you met the guys that needed the Kobe valve. And so we paused there. And then I looked down at my rig and I realized that my, the mount on my tie rod that's for my hydraulic ram was pointed literally straight up into the ground. And then I started looking at it and it would tilt even farther forward because I had gouges on my drag link where they were hitting. And so I was like, I need to turn that back.
Yeah.
And so I reached down to the driver's side jam nut and it was finger loose.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's the one we replaced in Moab.
We replaced a jam nut?
We replaced a whole ball end.
Oh, the ball joint castle nut there.
Yeah. And then we tightened it all up.
I thought we just tightened the castle nut down because it was super loose.
We replaced the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we replaced that whole scenario. And for some odd reason, that jam nut came loose on that same side.
Okay.
So you guys took off and Husman and I counter twisted that, and set it in a proper place and really tightened the jam nut down this time with a big adjustable wrench. And my steering feels so good now. It's
Got a great steering system.
Yeah, there's not a lot of play in it at all, and it's fairly tight. Yeah, it feels pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah, so that, and then we caught back up to you guys. From there, we caught up to you before Merlin's table. Hussman, me, and first gen Taco Brian, tailgater Taco, went down a little sluice to the shelf turn and turned and did the shelf. And then we wheeled to Soup Bowl.
Yeah. Yep. We had a little bit of traffic at Merlin's table. Nothing bad. We had those one people that needed the Colby valve.
We ran into traffic at winter camp.
Traffic at winter camp, a couple. There was a big group of old school Toyotas and Gazelle tents.
Yeah.
At the winter camp, and I was like, my people!
A whole freaking campground of Gazelle tents.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. So we did that, and then pretty much went down to Soup Bowl and got there and decided that's where we were going to have lunch. And Tom wanted to go take the hike to check out the trench, and Lee wanted to bleed his brakes.
Yeah, he thought his brakes were pretty spongy. So we all so he said, yeah, let's go do this hike. And then when Lee was like, I'm going to bleed my brakes, and Tom was like, well, I'm going to stay here and help Lee bleed his brakes. And we're like, the whole reason we stopped was so you could go see this trench.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I've been to the trench. I'll help Lee bleed his brakes. You hike to the trench.
Yeah.
And so we bled the brakes, and there was bubbles. Some air did come out of his driver's side.
Okay.
Caliper. And then we also took off his front rear sway bar.
He's got two sway bars in the front?
I don't know. I think it's the only one.
Okay.
I don't know if he has a front sway bar.
So when
the front of the axle sway bar.
Okay.
The one we took off was behind the axle.
Gotcha. Okay. So that one he had already disconnected from the axle. Was it like, why did you guys take it off altogether?
Because it was, I think the main reason for him taking it off is because it's really hard to align to put back on. But it was also swinging down and not staying up, which he didn't zip tie. I think a lot of people sort of hold them up there one way or another. And it was pushing against a bar that goes behind his axle too.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he was getting interference there. So he's like, let's just take it off.
Nice.
So
that's never going back on. You know that, right?
I don't know.
You don't know?
As much road driving as that guy does, it might.
I don't know, because I think he's going to drive home without it on and be like, oh, this is just fine.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But as much weight as that guy carries too?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
There's only one way to find out.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I know that
Expo.
he removed his exhaust dump.
I saw that. Finally.
That got tore up.
Yeah. I think he had to open his exhaust a few times on the trip because it kept getting collapsed.
Yeah.
Let's see. From Little Sluice.
Soup Bowl?
Soup Bowl. That's what I meant. It was pretty smooth. I don't think we had any issues going out. Ran into traffic a few times. There's a big group of Jeeps, like 6 or 7 Jeeps that came through. You turned off and away from the group for a split second.
I had to go be Han Solo for a bit.
Yeah, and you went down Wentworth Springs below Post Pile to check something out. What were you doing?
So the Mad Hatters have the Adopt a Trail section from Wentworth Springs Campground into the main trail. So that whole section of trail there, the Wentworth Springs Inner Tie is what it's called, is our Adopt a Trail. And so we're in charge of making sure that the silt pots get cleaned up. There's not trees in the middle of the road. The manzanita is cut back so vehicles can get through. And just overall, the general trail maintenance for that section. The biggest issue on that section is the silt pots. And a silt pot is just a big hole in the ground lined with rocks. That way water runoff can come down there and deposit all the silt runoff from the trail into these silt pots rather than the silt continuing on down into the watershed into California's water system.
Right.
So there's this one spot that's just, it floods every single year. And we have like a 10-foot diameter silt pot there. And it ends up taking an hour's worth of work and like 12 people to clean it out every year.
Right.
But we can't go in and clean it until it's completely dried up.
That makes sense.
So I've been asking people, because I haven't been able to get out to the trail yet this year. Hey, what does the Wentworth Springs inner tie look like? What is it? And some people say it's completely soaked. There's puddles 2 feet deep on it, or, oh, it's completely dried up. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Which one is it? And so I was like, I'm just going to go while I'm here. I'm going to run down there real quick, put eyes on it myself, and I might be able to catch the group back before you guys hit the spillway. Mm-hmm. And so, I split off and I took off from Soup Bowl about 2 minutes ahead of everybody else. And as I started going, I started hearing clink, 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 clink underneath my rig.
Really?
Yeah. And it sounded like the dirt protectors on the pinion and the transfer case outputs.
Oh yeah.
Those little
those sleeves.
Yeah. The dust shields.
Yeah.
It sounded like them, like they were clinking around. And I was like, what is going on? And so I stop and I get out and look real quick, and somebody put zip ties on my drive shaft. And so I happened to stop like right next to Hussman, and he saw me get out and look under the rig, and I get back in. He yells over to me. He goes, "What's going on? Did you find something you don't like?" And I was like, "Nope. I like it all just fine." He goes, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And so I started driving away. He goes, "Hey, your rig's making some funny noises." I said, "I know, and I'm going to keep it that way." And so I just drove off, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to deal with it, because I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of me cutting him off.
Yeah.
And it started getting to the point in third gear, because he put a 20-pound zip tie on the front shaft and then like 120-pound zip tie on the rear shaft. And so the 20 pounds, the rear one was hitting my gas tank skid plate, and the front one was like hitting my something. I don't even know what it was hitting. Might have been the transfer case skid.
Okay.
Like he put it up pretty close to the output of the T case. But the front one was this high pitched ding, and the rear one was like more like a low thud noise. And so as I got up into third gear, 4/7 third gear, it was going digga 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 digga. I was like, man, I can almost have like some house music going on with this.
You should have. I think I came across the radio to see if you can match a beat with it.
Yeah, that's after you said that, I started playing around with different speeds to figure out if I could find a speed where I had a fun beat going on.
That's cool.
But anyway, so my trip down Wentworth Springs was fairly uneventful. The trip back up, though, I was trying to like catch up to you guys before you got out to the spillway, because I was listening to you the whole time, and I knew where you guys were the whole time. I was like, sure, I might actually be able to like go all the way in here and come all the way back out and reach them before they finish. And so I was trying to like hurry my way out, and I almost endoed my Forerunner backwards.
Really?
Yeah.
Where
was it? It was... So there's one spot coming up Wentworth Springs where that's 2 line options. One to the right is that there's a big ass tree in the middle, right?
Okay.
And the one to the right is just a massive ledge, 8-foot ledge. And the way you climb it is you put your front passenger tire on the ledge to climb, and your front driver, you climb the tree roots.
Oh, okay.
And so there's that line. I was like, I'm not going to do that without anybody else here, because I know that I pop a tire on that every single time. I pop a wheel in the air.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to go the other way.
A Jeep wave.
Yeah, I do a Jeep wave. And so I was going the other way, and I just didn't get lined up in the exact line I wanted. And my rear driver tire, was it? Yeah, it was my rear driver tire fell in a hole, and the whole front end of the rig came up off of the ground as I tried to just crawl through it. And I went whoop, and I was like, oh no. And I had slammed it back into reverse and brought the front end down.
Wow.
And so then I backed up and looked at it, and I was like, was I on the line I thought I was on? And I was like a foot over from where I thought I was.
Oh.
And so I moved back onto the line I wanted and went up no problem. And there's another section, you just have to climb up and over these 2 boulders to get up on a ledge. You have to climb the 2 boulders and then climb the ledge. And I came down off of the rear driver boulder hard on my shackles. And so after we got out to the spillway, I started looking over, and that nut that holds the shackle, or the bolt into the shackle, the nut is fucked.
Oh no.
I must have come down right on that nut.
Bummer.
Yeah. So I'm like, whatever. I get new hardware.
Yeah.
But
from
made
the
it out just fine. Then it caught back up to you guys. So how was your guys' trip back up?
Yeah, it was a piece of cake. We ran into a little bit of traffic at Whalebones.
Okay.
And then or right before Whalebones, like there's that rocky section before you climb up on the slabs before you drop down into Whalebones. We ran into a little traffic there, and then Hustle Nuts was in the front, and he's like, there's some people coming up, like up the granite slab on the other side of Whalebones. Let me see how many are going to be there. And so he starts driving down to go see what the game plan is. And then he's like, oh, they're all hopping out of their rig. Let's just go.
Yeah.
And so we all went down. And then by the time I, who was pretty much tail gunner, or Brian, got to, or maybe it was James, I don't know at that point, got to the group, there was like 8 or 9 rigs there. And the last one had just pulled up.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then we went down the slabs.
Were they all like really built rigs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you probably passed them as well. Some full size rigs, some down to a Samurai. Yeah, some beat up Raisin Toyotas and all. Yeah, I'm sure you passed them.
They were from Johnson Valley.
Oh, cool.
A couple of them had Johnson Valley crawler stickers on the back.
Nice.
So,
yeah. We all went down the slabs pretty uneventfully. Husman and I like scooted to the very front real quick, and we like went down the stairs, and there's this Jeep like trying to figure out life. 4 people in the Jeep. All 3 of them were outside trying to tell the people where to go.
Okay, I found that guy too.
Yeah, I don't think his tires were aired down or anything.
No.
So and then on the descend down to Beer Tree, I just put in like low second gear and just idled, and everybody passed me except for, I think it was Lee or maybe somewhere around there. And then I don't think Lee knew exactly the line to go up. So then I started jamming up the other side of the bowl, and we got up to the top. Husband stopped, and we all reconvened. And that's when you said, I think you were at the inner tie.
Yep.
And we're like, oh, we're just finishing a snack. I guess we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Didn't really have any problems going down Snail Hill. Cruised through that. We got down to the other side, and there was like a lady holding a baby.
On the other side of Snail Hill?
On the other side of Snail Hill. And no rigs around and nothing. And Jacob was in the front at this point.
Uh-huh.
And he got out of his rig to come back and tell us that there was a lady holding a baby.
Okay.
And Brian was next, and Brian's like, I'm going to go look and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And so Brian hopped out of his rig to start walking ahead. And I was like, well, I'm just going to putt. And, you run ahead, see what's going on. Jacob at that point wheeled on. I guess then Brian comes walking back, and he said that the lady is just there watching. And her rig and her friend's rigs are on the other side of Gatekeeper, not even coming through.
Gotcha. So those were the other 3 rigs that were over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we drove through Gatekeeper. Lee got hung up once or twice. I tried to do this line that have these 4 big rocks on the passenger side. And I tried to land on them, in line. And I slid off of the last one on my passenger side. And I was like, dang it. And so then I started to try to get out, and I couldn't. I was like stuck. I was like high centered or diffed, and it took me a while to get out. And I eventually did, and I drove off to the side and parked, and then Husman was coming down. He was helping Lee, but then he started coming down. And I said, and I was telling him, I'm like, man, I'm a little embarrassed, but I got pretty damn stuck in Gatekeeper. And he's like, where? Tell me what you did. And I was like, oh, it's kind of embarrassing. It's like what I did. It's like looks so easy, but I got stuck. I don't know why. And he's like, tell me. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, I'll show you. And I was like, I did passenger side front tire on this rock, this rock, this rock, and this rock. Right. And he's like, okay. And so he did it. And then he got to the last rock, and then he slid off driver's side.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then but then you're just in the clear and you drive out.
Yeah.
And then then we got Lee through, and then I think James was next, or Brian was next, one or the other. And then James came through. I'm like, all right, James, I want you to hit this rock 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
And he hit rock 1, 2, 3, totally fine. And then when he hit rock 4, he barely slid off on the passenger side. And I was like, stop, you're off. Reverse hard driver, pulled up, and then he lined himself up perfectly and drove across rock 4. And then we drove all the way back to Spillway, and we're fine. And then I got back to the Spillway, and Jacob was like, Gleghorn was like, is your hub still unlocked? I was like, what? It's like, your hub. Did you ever lock your hub? Like, what? No? What hub? He's like, I unlocked your passenger side hub when we're at the top of the bowl. I was like, well, that makes more sense of why I was having a hard time getting and somewhat stuck in the gatekeeper.
Couldn't figure out how to get off. That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's great. Good job, Jacob.
Yeah.
MVP.
That was pretty good. And then let's see. Then you got back shortly after us. Everybody was pretty much aired up. Some of us were saying once you got back, some of them said goodbyes. A few people took off. It was like you, Jacob, me, and James left, and we were idling there. And you were airing up. We were all done airing up, and you were idling and airing up. And then your rig started overheating.
Yep. I started boiling over out the reservoir for the radiator, the coolant reservoir, the overfill.
Yeah, at first you're like, I don't think my air compressor is going to make it.
Yeah, because
it's an old ARB.
It's 6-7 years old now, ARB twin, and one of the cylinders has not been working. And so I threw turns out I had a blown fuse in that cylinder, and it was a 45 amp fuse, or 40 amp, whatever it is in those. So I threw an 80 amp fuse in because that's the size I had. And it melted the wire on the second cylinder of the compressor. So I pulled the fuse back out.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we're not going to run that anymore. Something's going on with that cylinder. So I was like, okay, whatever. We'll just finish it up with my single ARB, airing up 40s. I'll be here a while. And I started making these like thup, 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 thup noises. And I was like, oh man, so I don't know if the compressor is going to make it. Yeah. And turns out it was my overfill boiling over, not the compressor.
I don't think that's your compressor.
No. So I overheated.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell? And so I shut off the rig really quick. And I'm like, why is my electric fan not on? I was like, what does the temperature say on the control module? Control module wasn't on for the electric fan. And what was funny, so before that, coming into the spillway, I almost radioed you guys to tell you I was entering Gatekeeper because you guys were saying the last person was coming off the trail as I was entering Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'm not going to tell him. I'm just going to motor on through Gatekeeper and then see if I surprise him when I get there. And so I come around the spillway with my siren going and being all obnoxious. And as I had
not very good at trail etiquette.
And earlier in the trip, somebody had said, I'm going to cut the freaking wires on Tyler's siren.
Yeah.
And so I pulled up and parked. And when I went to move so that Hussman could leave, and I went over to my shade spot, I tried to hit the siren and nothing happened. And I was like, did somebody actually cut my wires?
Oh, no.
On the siren?
Yeah.
And turns out I had some electrical issues going to the accessory fuse box in my engine bay that all my accessories run off of, including my electric fan.
Got it. Okay.
And so turns out...
So if all we need to do is to get the siren to not work is to pull the fuse on your accessory box.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Yep. And then I overheat my rig.
Yeah. Well, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to accept.
Right, teach me to put siren and blow up people's heads with siren. So anyways, Lee found it. So he started wiggling around on my wiring on my battery, and we could hear my radio turn on and off in the rig.
Yeah.
Whenever it triggered. And so we finally got it down to the connection, the ring terminal on the battery. And he's like wiggling the wire on the ring terminal, and the wire just falls out of the ring terminal. And I was like, oh, there's the problem. Okay, we had a loose connection there. And so we pull the ring terminal off, and I had never crimped that ring terminal onto the battery.
Yeah.
It's been there for almost 2 years.
That's impressive.
And had no issues whatsoever until yesterday or whatever day we came off.
Yeah.
So
Wednesday.
I was like 2 years, not crimped, never had any issues with it. I was like, A, I'm an idiot, and B, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
So anyways, once we found that out, everything ran great. We crimped it. We, just crimped it pretty much and then put it back on the battery and everything worked fine. So, and that was pretty much it. After that, it was everybody kind of just went their own separate ways and drove on home. And I made it to Georgetown without needing gas. Yeah. My light was on, but
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I had a problem going home.
Oh, really?
I did.
What was your problem?
When I left the chalet, my brake controller wasn't working.
Oh, for the trailer brake?
Yep.
That's no bueno.
That's no bueno.
Especially coming down from Quintet and everything into Georgetown.
Exactly.
Ooh. Okay.
So I futzed around with it for quite a while. I'd considered calling AAA. I drove down to the cell phone corner.
Okay.
So I could get service, so I could look at the internet, so I could do stuff. I took it slow and used my gears and pulled off into that corner. And what I found, which I'm not quite sure is the culprit, was that it was just really corroded in the female connection on the rig for the 7-pin.
Oh, okay.
Because what was interesting was the lights worked, the blinkers worked, the hazard lights were working, the running lights would work, but it wasn't getting brakes. Like
no
the
power to the brakes.
Brake signal wasn't coming through.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so to me, I kept futzing. Like I looked underneath the dash at the controller, but I'm like, why would it fail here?
Yeah.
So then I went to back and started following the line back on the trailer. I didn't see anything that could have looked bad. And then I looked at the lines on the backside of the 7-pin.
The female side that's on Clifford.
On the rig.
Okay.
And they were like, it's just old looking lines, kind of worn out. One of them had a fuse, like this inline fuse thing on it. And,
interesting.
I popped that open and like the fuse like disintegrated in my hands, and I'm like, well, this has been bad for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what was wrong with that. And so I pulled back this boot and that like blue green, like stuff that
from corrosion
from like on batteries just fell out of this boot.
Oh, geez.
And so I was like, that's not right either.
Yeah.
And so I, like wiggled every line and kept going up to the cab and seeing if the light would turn on my brake controller. Nothing did. And then eventually I was like, well, let me start cleaning this up. And I shot it with carb cleaner. And then I started trying to tighten everything down and all of them were super tight. Like I couldn't move any of them. And I went into the cab and the light was on.
The light
on the brake controller.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so
it was working now?
So it was working.
Okay.
So then I went really slowly playing with the brakes, trying to figure out if they were working or not. And they were. And so then I cruised the rest of the way home, but it took like another half an hour of me futzing with my rig at the top, trying to figure out what's wrong with it. And I don't know exactly what was wrong with it, but I got it working somehow. So
corrosion will do that, man.
Yeah.
That's what I'm pretty sure when I melted my fuse, my main engine fuse off the battery on Monday, I'm pretty sure it was due to corrosion. And looking at it all, now that we put in a new MIDI fuse and bolted it together to the lines, I'm actually getting a more voltage to the engine from the alternator and battery than what I used to get.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, like corrosion is not good for electronics. I know that, but I didn't realize how quickly it can disintegrate electronic signals and voltages. Right. So. Yeah.
So
increased
that was
resistance.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. So then I started playing. There's a gain and a level on my brake controller, and I never knew what the gain was. So while I was sitting there, I Googled it, and it's really the gain. They're sort of the same thing. One of them's like, how much pressure do you want to apply to the brakes? And the other one's like, how soon do you want the pressure to be applied on the trailer?
Gotcha. So that's how soon is level and how much is gain?
Exactly.
Yep.
So I've never adjusted the gain one. So then on the way down from Loon Lake, that whole hill, I was like playing with all the levels and the gain and level and gain and level and playing with them to get to the bottom. And then when I got to the bottom and stopped at the stop sign, I was like, oh, my brakes are super hot. Because the whole way I was like stopping when I didn't need to.
Yeah.
And so I waited there and just I waited for like 10 minutes to just let things kind of cool down a little bit.
Yeah.
Then that next section down is downhill, no brakes really anyway. So
yeah, when I was coming down from Quintet Volcanoville down, I was trying to conserve gas, right? So I just pop the transmission in neutral and just coast.
Yeah.
But I was coasting faster than I wanted to be going, so I had to keep using the brakes.
Sure.
And after about 15, 20 minutes, the brakes got really spongy all of a sudden. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's too hot. I need to use the transmission.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you don't... something that's always weird to think about, but it's different on newer vehicles now. We talked about it on the hypermiling, but when you are coasting in gear, you're only using enough fuel of idle.
That's true because is it though? Because if the injectors are firing according to the speed of the RPMs.
No, the injectors fire the speed of the RPMs, but how much fuel goes in is dependent on your pedal too.
Interesting. I always assumed the amount of fuel is... No, I guess that makes sense. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I always assumed the amount of fuel was the same. It really just depends on the RPMs, but that's absolutely not true because you need more fuel in order to accelerate the RPMs.
Yeah, you could be at 45 miles an hour at 7,000 RPMs, or you could be at 45 miles an hour at 2,000 RPMs, and you're using different gas amounts.
You could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you could also be using the same amount too. Then, if you're depending on if you're coasting or applying gas at each one.
In an essence, yeah.
Yeah.
And during the hypermiling episode, you said that new vehicles, if you're in gear and you're not on the gas, then the injectors aren't firing at all.
That's right. Some of the newer ones, yeah.
So I don't know if your rig is new enough for that, but I know mine definitely isn't.
I doubt it.
And so I've always had the question, like, should I be, if I'm ascending a hill, which gets better gas mileage at let's say third gear, 5,000 RPMs, or fourth gear, 1,000 RPMs? Which one's getting me more, gas?
Yeah, better gas mileage. Yeah.
And really, I mean, the answer is it's negate. They're about the same. They both get you pretty much to the top about the same amount. So, and then you can serve on the coasting on the downside.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's always been weird in my mind to be like, if I'm in gear, it's not really burning any more fuel than if I'm in neutral.
Yeah.
Because you're still idling. Both of them are just putting enough in to keep idle kind of going.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's something for the crowd out there.
Okay, cool.
All right. And then I got home, you got home, and I think Hussman got home.
I think so.
I know Dave got home because the assistant was hanging out with Dave's wife and at their house when Dave got home. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I assume everybody made it home just fine. I haven't heard otherwise. So
I've gotten emails from some of the other people.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't checked my email yet, my Snail Trail email.
I know Jacob got home. I know Lee got home. I know Rob got home. I didn't hear about Ray, but I'm pretty sure if Rob got home, Ray got home. Nick got home.
That's good.
Yeah, I think everybody that joined us is still alive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad Nick made it home and he didn't need that bolt I took out.
Yeah, that's a bonus.
Yeah. So now I have an extra bolt too. So
I know.
Yeah.
It's grade 8.
I know.
Nice.
It's a little fancy bolt too.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad. I think everybody had a good trip.
I think so.
Everybody said thank you for the trip to me and that they had a great time. So, I had a really good time. I wasn't happy about losing my air conditioning the last day, but other than that, it was fantastic. I had a really good time hanging out with everybody, getting to meet new people, hanging out with Tom, Rob, Ray, James, Jacob. And so, hanging out with everybody that I don't normally get to hang out with, and then the normal guys too. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the trip a lot.
It was definitely. I think if in my hindsight, I would have liked to do a little less wheeling.
It was that day from Buck up to observation and back. That was a more wheeling than I was anticipating. So I really don't think it would have been fun to wheel to Rubicon Springs on day one. I think we would have done it, or we could have done it easily. I don't know. We pulled into Buck at like 5, almost 6 p.m.
Yeah. But it only took us about another hour to get to the Springs.
That's true.
So, or maybe
with no traffic and big sluice.
So, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think if it was me and I were to do it again and I would organize it, I think I would have liked to drive to Buck, spend an entire day at Buck.
Okay.
Don't wheel, low key, relax, hang out, swim, go paddleboarding, whatever. And then the next day wheel all the way through and out. I
would like that too, especially on a weekday trip.
Yeah.
Hanging out in Buck on a weekday, awesome. The Springs, I love hanging out in the Springs, but trying to get people from Loon to the Springs in one day is it's a long day. And if you have any issues on the trail, any traffic on the trail, you're screwed. And it's a long ass day.
And I think we knew going into it that, we had Lee, who's a fairly decent driver, but his rig isn't a rock crawler.
No.
And we had two Tacomas with us that we didn't really know the people that well and didn't know their rigs that well. And so we didn't want to try to get to the Springs because we were concerned about those factors.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's why we picked Buck.
Yep. I'm really happy with it, though.
Yeah, and we picked the far end of Buck with the thought of that, the next day we're gonna try to wheel a lot, and let's wheel a little bit more on the first day to try to wheel a little bit less later.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like I think a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, we got to Buck," and they think it's like one spot like Supple, but really like the whole trail around Buck is like 3/4 of a mile, something like that.
It's pretty good.
It's some pretty good wheeling through there too. Around the lake.
It's probably a solid mile from the first campsite after that V notch area all the way to our campground.
Yeah, probably true.
Maybe, I don't know, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it takes a while to get through. It's not like one little spot. So yeah, well, cool, man. I'm glad we got to do the trip finally, the listener trip. I'm glad. You okay over there?
I'm fine. Like,
what's under there? Is it a
coaster under a napkin that's making my glass fall or my cup fall?
I'm glad we got to do the trip finally after like 2 years of trying to do this trip. So we'll have to see when we can do it in the future again. If we want to do it again, I kind of want to do it again in the future. I need to figure out how to, I don't want to say plan. I need to figure out how to plan on being away from work better.
Sure.
So, yeah.
It's hard when you're a solopreneur.
Yeah, right.
To some extent, right? It's like you're gone and you come back and now you have 3 days of work to do. Yep.
Which takes longer than 3 days to do it now because
you also have the day of work that you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
I get it.
Yeah. Yep. So anyways, thanks for everybody for coming along. That was there on the trip. It was a lot of fun having you guys. I did figure out I was talking about, I'm going to remove the twin ARB from my rig. I'm going to put a shower in right there. My shower setup. Nice. So that's what I'm going to put in right there.
Yeah. I need to give Bobcat some love on the front end steering setup and, I want to get 2 new hoses, hydraulic lines. The hose that broke was probably like 10 years old. And there's another hose right beside it that's just as old. So I think it's time to replace that one. And I need to get a spare. I might give some, I believe when the tie rod was twisting around and it was banging into the drag link or the panhard or whatever we call it, it bent my tie rod.
Oh,
so that it's like bent down because of coming down and landing on it.
Okay.
So I think I need to replace one of those at minimum. And and I need to replace the ball joint on the pitman arm.
Gotcha.
So I need to give Bobcat a little love on that front end.
Sounds good.
Yep. It'll be good. It'll be fun. And then I'll be ready. Nice.
I just need to get my air conditioning fixed and my power steering pump swapped out, and then I'll be ready for Overland Expo. I'm towing the trailer up there.
Good luck with that. I'll be up there in the Tacoma.
Yeah. Bougie.
Heck yeah.
All right, man. If anybody had any feedback for us, any questions about the trip, feel free to reach out to us. You guys know how to do that. And I guess without further ado, Jimmy, any final words for everybody?
Keep your ear holes open for the next trip.
And with that, my friends, keep crawling.
I got one for you.
Ready.
Where do fruits go on vacation?
I don't know.
Paris.
Pears?
Pears.
Pears? Pears is?
Paris.
Ah, one's a stretch.
All right.
Paris.
Why can't you trust an atom?
Because they're shisty fellers.
Because they make up everything.
Mm-hmm.